So how do you solve that problem? Besides, you say you do the 2-hour session with people, trying to understand that, where they're coming from, what they did, their experiences, and then what they're looking for next, how are you connecting those dots, if you can shed some light on that?
Yeah. So, if you get up above work and you move into health and then prosperity, I think so many people are caught up in this illusion that once they have enough money, that all their problems go away. The fact of the matter is, when you have the money that you need,
Mm-hmm.
then everything gets really quiet and all you can hear is a problem that money won't solve. And
Mm-hmm.
so that financial freedom is the wrong F. And I guess you need to chase it, right? I think you need to achieve it because you can't live in this world without the money. But I think we're mistaken in thinking that it's the end point.
This is the Real Estate Wife Show, and I'm your host, Vinki Loomba, a commercial real estate investor. And today I have a very, very special guest, my very good friend, Jerome Myers. Welcome to the Real Estate Wife Show, Jerome.
Vinki, so good to be with you today and catch this real estate vibe. So good to see you. Thank you for having me on.
Awesome. I'm super excited for our conversation, Jerome. We have a lot to talk about it. We've been talking for days, and it's going to be a lot to learn from you today. And everybody, just wanted to mention that Jerome is on our podcast for the second time. And he he actually one of my first guests when I started the podcast long back. If you wanted to tune into that episode, it's episode number 13. And he talked about his spiritual journey, I would say more like from his childhood dream of wanting to be a trash man. And then he created Myers method. And he talks about his red pill, blue pill, and he's always been a dreamer. Tune into that podcast to learn more about him. And a little bit about Jerome today. He's an award-winning engineer turned business strategist, drawn his extensive experience and deep understanding of human emotions to guide individuals from corporate world to entrepreneurship, because he came from the corporate world, right? And he's making some big waves. So beyond corporate success, Jerome serves as a general partner in multifamily real estate portfolio, and he contributes strategic insight to the North Carolina Agriculture Technical State University Entrepreneurship Advisory Board. As the host of the Dream Catchers podcast, he supports founders in overcoming doubts across 6 key areas after significant life transitions: self-image, relationship, work, health, prosperity, and significance. Those are all important. It's just like that makes you human. I love it. So today we're going to be talking about exit paradox. So, Jerome, we get started on paradox. How did you come up with this terminology, exit paradox? It's not that common, or it's not heard that much, because when you said first time, I'm going to be talking about exit paradox, I'm like, let me look it up.
What is that? Yeah. It's really interesting, right? So a lot of times when people exit, they can sell a real estate deal, they can sell their business, they can leave corporate America. There's a bunch of different exits. We've actually found 8 for founders. They are supposed to be happy, just looking at all the circumstances from the outside looking in. And then when you actually peel back the onion, you find out that they've got these other icky feelings that nobody wants to talk about. And it's more of a conversation that they only want to have with people who are really close to them. And they're worried about being seen as ungrateful. They're worried about people questioning whether or not they deserve it. They have all of these concerns, these doubts, and it's spread across those 6 areas that you mentioned: self-image, relationship, work, health, prosperity, and significance. And it's because their whole world life has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And that in and of itself is the challenge. It's like, what do I do now? What's next?
Mm-hmm.
And in that space, you find that you've got all this freedom, you have this new opportunity, but you feel lost.
Mm-hmm.
And that loss is a very uncomfortable feeling. It's a loss of control, even though we're probably not in control if you really pull back the layers. And it's a loss of certainty, which is probably a bigger one, and one that I think we probably should dive in deeper on.
Yeah, because the thing is, the way I look at it is because you're working towards some goal, right? I wanted to achieve that. Like, for example, if you say, I wanted to buy a Lamborghini, that's my goal. So I work towards it, 6 months or, yeah, exactly. You got it right there. 6 months, maybe 6 years, maybe 10 years. I'm working towards that goal. So once I have that Lamborghini, that goal is gone. So what next now, right? So what do I do next? A lot of time people forget that. But this kind of understanding, only you can have it from your experience. So I've been talking to you for last so many days, and I understand, how you have grown so big because you are a coach and a very successful mentor and very sought after mentor. And then you've been coaching so many people. All of a sudden you thought, maybe I wanted to be more strategic, maybe I wanted to scale down. So I would like to learn about that experience. What was that for you that you came up with this concept of exit paradox?
Yeah. So I was at a business conference and I was standing in the back of the room because I kind of get antsy after a couple of days of sitting in a ballroom. And a guy was giving a presentation. It was like my 7 steps to getting a double unicorn exit from a company. And so he was one of the owners of Kajabi, the learning, like LMS, learning management system platform that so many people put their courses on. And they just sold the company for $2 billion. And he'd been sitting around for basically a year trying to figure out what he was going to do next. And so part of it was making this presentation so he could go speak about it. And so he's going through the presentation. He was like, yeah, I was on the couch and my wife told me I was having an existential crisis. I'm so smart. I didn't know what it was. And she told me, hey, I don't care what you do, but you need to go talk business. And if you can't figure anything else, go get a job at a fast food restaurant. And he just kind of breezed through it, said it as glib as that. And then he kept going through the progression, the 7 steps to have a 100 or a $2 billion exit. And so we got the Q&A and I got the microphone and I said, all right, you ready for this? And he said, with the setup like that, I don't know, but I'll do my best. And I said, how'd you solve your crisis? How'd you get out of your crisis? And he said, oh, that's an easy one. I'll let you know when I figure it out. And I was like, is that all you're going to give me? He said, well, here's the thing. There's not a whole lot of people who are interested in hearing about somebody who had an exit as big as mine and are struggling to figure out what they should do next. And I was like, oh, I'm wanting something. And so what I saw was a man being vulnerable in front of a room full of his peers and people who aspire to be like him. And so I went and did some research. And in doing that research, I realized that there isn't anybody who actually focuses on founders on the backside of their exit. All that they care about is how to get them to the point of selling the company. On the backside, they're left with as much money and as time as they've ever had to figure out all the other stuff. The problem is most people aren't prepared for it because they've created a life of discipline. That's how they built the thing. And now all the things that was forcing the discipline are gone. And so you're stuck in this space, in this place where you're like, oh, well, what do I do? Like, how do I introduce myself is one of the simplest ways to think about it. If you've always introduced yourself as, hey, I own this company that does this, or my title is senior vice president at this company, or I'm the manager of digital services for this big tech company, or whatever the thing is, and then you leave that, you are challenged. Your identity is gone. Your self-image is gone. You start questioning the relationships that you have that were outside of work. But I think when I talk to most people, when we do this 2C exercise that we have for our clients, we find out that most people can't name anybody outside of their family and the workplace that they spend a lot of time with. And so when people are trapped in that space where the people closest to them are gone, what they knew themselves to be and as is gone, and the work that they were doing, which is level 3, is gone, what do? They start to panic. At times they start to self-destruct. it starts to unravel. And I liken it to a nuclear power plant. And some of the listeners may have no idea how those things work, but there's a nuclear reactor inside these walls of like 6 foot thick concrete. And if you disconnect the reactor from the power for too long, it will continue to heat up and heat up and heat up. And then eventually it'll implode, right? It'll blow itself up. And that's what happens to these really talented founders and people who are exiting corporate America. When they lose that piece of their identity, they're imploding because they have nowhere to put that energy that they have. And so I said, well, one, this is a big problem. Two, why isn't anybody fixing it? And what I realized was nobody's fixing it because it doesn't really fit neatly in anybody's bucket. For the psychiatrists and the mental health workers, these folks don't have a diagnosis, right? The diagnosis is, I don't know what to do with my life now that I've done this other thing. For the career coaches, well, they don't really have a career, so it doesn't fit there. And then for the people who help them with the transition, well, it doesn't fit there because there's no transition for them to get paid against. So they were just left to figure it out on their own. And I don't think that we as people are really well positioned to figure things out on our own when it comes to us. I think there needs to be a guide to help us ask the questions and really be honest with ourselves about the answers about ourselves. I liken it to being inside of a jar and trying to read the label on the outside of the jar. And you are in the jar, and the objective third party comes up and says, hey, you got all these ingredients, and here's a problem that you could potentially apply them against. Maybe this is next for you, or some variation of that. And what we found in our process, we've got this 2-hour thing that we do when folks come to us, that we unpack all the ingredients, and we talk to them about the problems that they like solving. And we come back with a report that gives them all of those things so they can see them potentially in a different light, because they look at it every day. They see themselves every day. They cultivated those skills over years, and over those years, they kind of minimize what their superpowers are.
So you help them, realize their superpowers or their strongest strengths so they can take it to the next level. But isn't that, I would say, human nature, that you're always looking for some validation or some, outer stimulation from somebody else, or somebody will tell you, do this is next for you, versus turning inwards, like you beautifully portrayed, the CEOs who exited at $2 billion. So what's next for him? So, for average person, like you and me, or maybe any other average person, will think, this person has a huge exit, $2 billion. So he exactly know what to do next, because he has already figured out the life, because he got there, right? So he had something in him, or he have acquired that much knowledge, that much experience, that it took him from ground zero to $2 billion. And now after the exit, he should know exactly what he should be doing next. But it's like, yeah, exactly. And it's like, so I would say, is strange to hear that, like, those people, successful people that we say, per se, like really, really successful, because as a human being or living in the material world, we just see people, their success as a material success, right? So materially, he has grown so much, he has achieved that success, but he doesn't know what to do next, at that point. So how do you solve that problem? Besides, you say you do the 2-hour session with people, trying to understand that, where they're coming from, what they did, their experiences, and then what they're looking for next, how you're connecting those dots, if you can shed some light on that.
Yeah. So, if you get up above work and you move into health and then prosperity, I think so many people are caught up in this illusion that once they have enough money, that all their problems go away. The fact of the matter is, when you have the money that you need, then everything gets really quiet, and all you can hear is a problem that money won't solve. And so that financial freedom is the wrong F. And I guess you need to chase it, right? I think you need to achieve it because you can't live in this world without the money. But I think we're mistaken in thinking that it's the end point. What we're really looking for is fulfillment. And so our goal is to help people find and reinvest the proceeds that they gleaned from their exit for a lasting legacy. It's proceeds invested for a lasting legacy is the pill. And in that pursuit, the pursuit of making the world a better place, the pursuit of eradicating a problem that they believe that nobody else should endure or suffer from, that they find that fulfillment, they find that impact. The way that I love for people to think about it is, what problem could you solve that's so big that people would fight to carry your casket when you pass on? Because I often ask people when they come to me, I said, who are your six? Most people have six pallbearers. Who are the six people who would carry your casket? And they say things like, well, I would guess my family would. They've never actually thought about the individuals who would. But what if that honor was such a big deal to so many people that they either stood in line so that they could do it, or they would fight so that they actually got an opportunity to do that last duty when you couldn't do it for yourself? And when people start thinking about the legacy in that way, I think they get rid of some of the things that I'll call ego. And what I mean by that is they'll stop pretending like the very surface things are meaningful to them, and they actually dig down deep and have a conversation and actually interrogate the beliefs that they have about how they should be impacting the world. And so that process, we start to stir that stuff up, and then we also tie it to rewards that we know are really going to appeal to the founders, so that when things get tough, because they will get hard regardless of how successful you've been in the past, anytime you're building something substantial and something that's going to live on longer than you, you're going to have those moments where you're like, why am I doing this? And when you've removed the need to work, right? When you become work optional because you've created enough income, either passively or through a lump sum nest egg type situation, that you don't, if you stop doing it, you could tell yourself that nobody would care or nobody would notice, and your financial situation wouldn't change. And I just believe, like, when you're doing things purely off of passion is when the magic actually happens.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Like you said, talking about, have something bigger than yourself is not about the money or the material hoarding that you're trying to do. It's like, so what you're talking about is having a purpose. So if you have a purpose, and when, like I say all the time, when purpose is bigger than profit, is all profit. So what are you trying to do is you're trying to create an impact as you are moving along in your journey. It's not about you, it's about everybody around you. And then you put a very good example, who will carry your casket. People think about as, yes, people will do things because in their experience or whatever the bubble they are living in, they have created that, their thinking around that this person will do this person will do this person will do that, and not necessarily even assign that with they just assume that they will do it when they are not there. That's the reason they cannot name it. And then earlier you were talking about the identity, that how we created these fake identities. I'm a senior vice president or I'm a CEO for this company. This is our identity, but this is not the true identity either, because we are much bigger than that, or maybe totally different than whatever this title is, because this title does not define a person. That's just a title. That's for the company. If the company goes away, title goes away. So then what happens to you? That you are not that CEO or that's a senior vice president anymore. Then who are you? That goes with your name and ego that you're talking about as well. So if you shed your name, shed your ego, who are you?
And this part is so important. It doesn't matter whether you exit or not. You have to have an identity outside of the work that you do. You have to have an identity outside of your role, your title. This time of year, towards the fourth quarter, people get laid off over and over and over again. And a lot of times people don't even see it coming. It's part of the reason why I dropped out of corporate America. I was just tired of seeing people get laid off year after year. And think about that somebody else could walk down the hall and say, hey, your services are no longer needed.
Mm-hmm.
You get to put your stuff in a box.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's your whole identity, then what do? You just pack it all in and close up shop. I just think so many people are getting caught up and identified with the wrong things. I think their image is tied to maybe the luxury car and the house and the title, but I don't think any of those things in the grand scheme of things actually matters. I think your impact on the lives of other people has a whole lot larger impact. And one of my affirmations is everyone I come in contact with is better because of our encounter.
So I'm going to ask you the question you talked about earlier, where you were saying, there is a difference people who are starting off in their career, and there's people who are, already exiting their career, So there's like two kind of exit paradox, I would say entry paradox or exit paradox, two different level of mindsets, right? That we're talking about, who are entering, whether in the corporate world or the entrepreneurship world or whatever you call it, their mindset is different, kind of doers mindset. I wanted to achieve this, I wanted to get somewhere. So that one. And then the other one who's exiting, okay, I done this, I achieved my goal, what next? So I would like to hear from you, your perspective, from your experience. What is difference between the two, and how can people set a ground rules for themselves so they're achieving their goal at the same time? They're not feeling that a feeling of emptiness. They're more like on the journey to fulfillment the whole time.
Yeah, I think the first thing is just the way you think about exits. We've actually identified, it's great how you simplified it. We've actually identified 8 exits of a founder, starting with leaving corporate America, and the other one where the end of it is having a fully endowed foundation that will continue to solve the problem that they've dedicated their life to in their post-exit situation. And I won't talk about all 8 here, but the way you think about an exit isn't the end, but it's the beginning of something new.
Beginning.
And that that shift in and of itself is the biggest difference in how people experience the exit paradox. If they're excited about the new opportunity instead of mourning the loss or the ending of the old thing, then they will feel totally different, and they won't be comparing it, and the comparison is the thief of joy, right? They won't be comparing what the new thing is against the old thing. The whole goal from our perspective is, one, get them excited about what's coming on the other side of it. They've got the opportunities, they got the resources, and in a way that they didn't have it before, because more often than not, when people are going to the exit prior to the one that they're in right now, they had less resources, they had less wisdom, they had less capital, they had less time because they weren't able to delegate and control their time in the way that they can at this point when they're more senior. I think the other thing is always having your eyes set on the next mountain. And so, if you go mountain climbing or rock climbing or hiking or something like that, you'll always see that there's another peak that's higher than the mountain that you're on. It doesn't matter if you feel like you're climbing the highest mountain. And so the goal is to make sure that before they get to the apex of whatever mountain that they're on, that they set their sights on another one. And so this is why we like working with people before they experience the exit paradox, because this is our opportunity to help them find that second mountain before they actually hit the peak and get the hit of dopamine and then the slump that comes after it if they don't have something else to build on.
Great. I'm going to ask you about the live example from your life experience, from your time leading this company, the $20 million operation, Fortune 500 company that you were leading and advising a bunch of leaders and various industry, line 1, line 2 managers, whatever you're trying to do. So how did this principle of the exit paradox apply? And then how did you yourself, for your personal experience, transition from your corporate world into the entrepreneurship? Because this is a new beginning that was ending for you, right? That was again a shift.
Yeah, so I think I'll be able to go through probably 6, 7, maybe 8 of the exits, but I'll do it quickly. And so the first exit for me was when I decided to leave corporate America. And so, as you just alluded to, I built a $20 million division of a company. We were at $0 in revenue on January 13th of 2015. By the end of the year, I had $6 million in profit on $20 million in revenue, and I had about 175 people on my team. In that space, I had the opportunity to lay people off. And I pointed the finger and said other people made me do it. But the fact of the matter was, I chose to participate in it. And when I said other people made me do it, I was just passing the buck.
Mhm.
The next year we did another $20 million, another $6 million in profit, but it was Thanksgiving instead of Christmas this year. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I left corporate and ventured off into entrepreneurship to be a real estate entrepreneur. I thought I was going to buy apartment buildings at first, but that didn't work out. I started fixing and flipping. And then eventually I was able to get into my first apartment deal. In the apartment space, we usually use third-party property management. And so that allowed me to get out of leasing and renovations and a bunch of the things that you need to do in order to successfully run an apartment business. And so I was able to skip levels 1 or exit 2, which is chief everything officer, after we closed on our first deal. So I was chief everything officer from looking for deals, finding funding, putting the business plan together, and all the other steps that go into actually getting a deal closed. But once we closed on it, then I was able to elevate and get out of that day-to-day doing everything to having people like our management company and community managers doing the day-to-day operations of the business, and then just kind of managing the reports. As we were growing, we almost got to the place where we put in a chief operating officer, actually had somebody that was doing all of the reporting and a few other things that were really important items, which is exit number 4, was when the CEO gets out of the day-to-day. But we decided that we were going to pause our growth when COVID hit because we wanted to see what happened from a pricing standpoint for the units. And we wanted to focus on operating our portfolio really well. And so fast forward to exit 6, where you actually get a big payday. Last year, we sold one of our properties. This year, we sold one of our properties, and we were able to get fairly large checks as a result of our ownership in those deals. So this, on the post-exit space, exit 7, comes the portfolio allocation. And so you have more money in your bank than you have ever had. What do you do with it? And do you just put it in the stock market? Do you put it under a mattress? Do you buy other businesses? There's a bunch of, depending on how large the exits are, there's a bunch of different options. And so you can start evaluating where you want to place that capital. Some people, the biggest fear is running out of money. And so if they run out of money and they don't have any cash flowing assets, then they end up in a space where they have to go back to work. And so when you run through it, as I did pretty quickly, like I condensed years into a few seconds, right? But those are the 7 exits. Fortunately for us, we'd already done one of the things that was really important for us, which was endowing a full engineering scholarship at my alma mater. And so what we are doing is taking it from 1 student to 2 students, but that is going to be a big part of, our proceeds invested for a lasting legacy. And so our goal with that is to help build generational wealth for people who are going to have a relatively high paying job without the burden of the student debt that so many people incur when they're trying to get those credentials so that they can go into the workplace and make $100,000 or more. So does that make sense?
It does make sense. And then I'm like really impressed, your 7 exits. So you were aware enough the whole time that, okay, I'm exiting this, I'm going to be, this going to be a new beginning, I'm going to be starting this thing new. So in your opinion, I wanted to ask you this question. Why is it crucial for the founders or entrepreneurs or anybody to be aware of this exit paradox? And how can they be aware so they can positively impact their personal or professional lives in a way that they know it's going to be new beginning, something is lined up for me. Like you say, when you're climbing a mountain, there's a next mountain that's higher than the previous one, right? And that's what you did from 1 through 7 exit that you had. So sometimes, like you were talking about the example earlier about the CEO who exited at 2 billion, but maybe he didn't have the next mountain to climb.
Did not.
So if you can, shed some light on that and the whole concept from your personal experience.
Yeah. So I didn't know that there were 8 exits. What we knew was that entrepreneurship is messy and it's not linear, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have the framework or the roadmap. That those 8X's is actually something that we created as we were going on this journey of figuring out the founder's exit paradox, because we want people to be able to have a map and say you are here and this is the next place you go on your journey to get to the progression that so many of us are looking for, which is that pot of the gold at the end of the rainbow, exit number 6. How do they know? So it's very teenager, most entrepreneurs or founders, to say, hey, it's never going to happen to me. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll be fine. Give me $10 million and I won't have any problems. I can assure you that you're going to experience the issues that come with the founder's exit paradox. It
Mm-hmm.
does not matter where you are, what you're doing. It doesn't matter how um, self-aware you believe you are. I knew that it was a thing, and I went through it this summer when we exited one of our buildings and our portfolio was smaller than it's been in a really long time. And I was like, well, do I even qualify to be an apartment investor anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Can I even talk about real estate investing? And yeah, I can, but in the same breath, you question that because it's part of your identity and it's gone. And so I say that to say, you know, it's going to happen. It's a part of the process. It's normal. And I'm on the mission to share this with as many people as possible so that they don't suffer in silence, like my buddy who had to have his wife tell him that he was having a crisis and that he needed to go do something about it. The way that you can lessen it is to have eyes on the second mountain and figuring out what that is and understanding that the money's not going to fix anything. In fact, it's just going to amplify whatever was there. And it's you and your ability to find fulfillment that is going to be the game changer for you in the life that you want to live.
Yeah, I know, having the purpose, and you are very purpose driven from day one, the way, since I know you, the way I see you. But I wanted to ask you, you are part of this North Carolina Agriculture and Technical State University entrepreneurship. You sit in the advisory board. So what motivated to join that group?
Yeah, so I went to school there, one, and then two, when I was on boards, when I was in corporate, I was always pushing the faculty to include entrepreneurial
Mm-hmm.
components into the projects because I didn't believe that everybody who went to college should go out and get a job. They should be exposed to entrepreneurship and be thinking about what they could possibly do on their own if they wanted to go open their own company. And so when the actually I got a certification in entrepreneurship from the guy that started this board prior to his retirement. And so when he decided that there was going to be a board at the university level, he reached out and invited me to come be a part of that. And I'm really grateful for that opportunity to help remind people that there is an opportunity to be an entrepreneur, to be a founder, and in that really chart your own path and create your own destiny versus fitting in the well-worn tracks of these large corporations.
Yeah, and I understand you do a lot of scholarships too, right? You help people a lot of different ways and add so much value. And thanks for doing that. I really appreciate you doing that because it's
Thank you for
all
that.
giving back to the community. We take so much and sometimes we forget. We just think about ourselves only. And that's the best way to create an impact. So looking forward, what do you see about this? The exit paradox, how it's evolving? Are people embracing it, trying to understand or getting aware enough, or they still, you think it's going to be sleepwalk for a long time?
Yeah, I think this is something that has been unearthed, and I'm the first person to actually bring it to the surface. I think it's the it's the little secret that nobody tells you about. And for the funny thing, the first exit from corporate to being a founder, nobody wants to talk about chief everything officer, right? When we look at what most people talk about on social media, it's about the private jets and the exotic cars and all the monies and the mansions and so on. But that's not what happens for founders in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if they do a good job or if their ad works or if something goes viral, maybe that happens at an early phase. But the majority of founders, I think I saw a statistic, Vinki, where there's like um, over 60% of the businesses in America are owned by baby boomers. And another large chunk is owned by Generation X. And those folks have been in those businesses 15 to 30 years. That's where the majority of people are. And so if that's the reality, and you got these 20-year-old folks who are saying how rich they are, and you saw what happened with the crypto millionaires, it's just a real, we've got to be really diligent in what we allow into our life and our understanding of what is actually real versus what's an illusion. And then from there, I think we can begin having a conversation about how this actually works and help people avoid what can be a really, really painful and potentially, for some people, life-ending experience. I mean, when people lose everything in concept, and loses in quotation marks, they start making some permanent decisions for temporary situations. The pressure to perform can be crushing for some folks. And it's like, well, if I did something that big, if I don't do the next thing that big, then I'm a failure. And nothing could be further from the truth. But they can create these prisons, these matrices that prevent them from actually taking a step in the right direction.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. So you have shared so many golden nuggets. We are kind of running out of time. I could talk to you for another 2 hours, but we have limited recording time. So I would like you to share one more golden nugget for my audience that is simple and sweet that they can put into their daily routine.
Yeah, I just want them to adopt the belief that their dreams should be real. And I don't think many people hear that after they're about 8 or 10, but I'm here to tell you as an adult that your dreams should be real, and anything that you're doing that's not helping make your dream a reality is a disservice to the world and a disservice to yourself, because that's what we've been placed here to do.
Yeah, thank you for that. I really love that. So this brings us to our rapid fire round. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You're going to answer in 1 word or 1 sentence only. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, so first question is, what is one of the most important thing that you have learned in your life, and how did it change your life after learning it?
1 sentence. Trust has nothing to do with whether or not you like a person.
I like that. Nobody ever put it like that before. Yes, because people think if you like somebody, you trust that person. You wanted to elaborate that in another sentence?
You said 1 sentence. No, yes, I do, because I think it's something that's not true for most people. They don't understand it. So here's the thing. Trust is all about predictability. And predictability is usually based on interactions with somebody. It's usually making a promise, keeping a promise, and doing that enough that a person believes that if you make a promise, you'll keep it. That predictability is the beginning and the end of trust. And I believe that so many people are trusting folks because they like them, and that's just not the reason why you should trust someone.
Thanks for sharing that. So share one good book that you like and recommend to my audience.
I am reading a book called What Happened to You, and it's about mental resilience and trauma. And I believe that it is a game changer for anybody out there who's struggled and had some of these life-altering experiences along the way. And what's funny about this is there's 5 shadow characteristics, and I know this is rapid fire, so maybe I should stop. But there's 5 shadow characteristics of apex performers, and it doesn't matter whether you're a corporate or a founder. You've been impacted by these things. Most of them are considered traumatic, and if you haven't done anything to resolve them, you could eventually slip over into a negative space. And that in and of itself is what I consider to be a challenge.
Yeah, I agree with you. And in my word, I will put it, these are kind of different kind of energies. They're trying to pull you down all the time and not letting you vibrate at the higher wavelengths. So moving on to the next question, in 1 word, what does life mean to you?
Service.
Love that. What is your biggest passion?
My goal is to end unnecessary suffering.
I like that. That's a really good one. If you could turn back in time and talk to your younger self, what would you tell yourself and why?
Bet on yourself now. All you know how to do is win.
That's a really good one. Very profound. Thanks, Jerome. I really enjoyed our conversation today and love to have you back to pick your mind again. But can you quickly share how people can reach out to you?
Yeah, if you're curious to learn more about the exit paradox, hop over to theexitparadox.com. And we've got some pretty cool resources over there for anybody who signs up to get some free downloads. I'm not going to tell you about them. You got to go check them out.
Thanks again, Jerome. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Vinki. This is a cool vibe.
All right.